Let's dive into the discussions shaping the nation.
Agus a tháineaste tá ibriní agus teaghlaí mar atá a gine strahailt cheannachéin le costas moráltara agus dhéanann an canseo ar tarifaí dothar do gra chaighlaí tír paisna a airdú agus ní féidir lei sin rialta seo ibriní a chréigiún ibriní atá cheannachéin faoi bhrú ibriní atá imneorthú agus iad a cloisteal faoi cogaí tréda le sna nuachtan. Later today, we expect the President of the United States to announce a trade deal with Britain. And this will be the first deal struck since the American administration unveiled aggressive tariffs on its trading partners across the world, including here in the European Union. They latterly partially suspended those tariffs to allow for space for negotiations, and we all know that it is through negotiations, cool heads, that this issue will be resolved. But this major change in US economic policy, particularly in the context of a trade deal with Britain, brings unique challenges here on the island of Ireland for cross-border trade and for our all-island economy. And the government really needs to be alert, needs to act to ensure that the post-Brexit gains and the progress made are protected so that the all-island economy can continue to grow and continue to prosper. The European Union is also set to launch today its suite of countermeasures to the US tariffs, and we have warned that a tit-for-tat trade war between the United States and the European Union would be not in Ireland's interest. The ESRI and the Department of Finance have been clear that President Trump's tariffs are damaging and that counter-tariffs from the EU would make things worse in terms of a hit to the public finances, to jobs and pushing up higher prices for Irish consumers. So I hope that you've made Ireland's unique position very clear in your discussions with your EU counterparts, because what we need an outcome that protects Irish jobs, livelihoods and the future of our economy, the all-island economy. And what that requires is, as I said, cool heads, and it also requires calm negotiations. It requires also a willingness on both sides to actually have meaningful negotiations. Because nobody wins in a trade war, and we know that, but it's always ordinary workers and families that suffer the most. Though the government would like to pretend otherwise, the tariff uncertainty is happening as working people are dealing with an unprecedented crisis in terms of cost of living. Households are hit by soaring grocery prices, energy costs, record rents, and we saw yesterday how motorists were being fleeced through sharp increases in motor insurance, all going in one direction, and that's up. And now, to add insult to injury, what the government did in its wisdom is you heaped on more pressure on those families just last week by increasing carbon tax, making it more expensive for those families to heat their homes and to cook their foods. Madness in the context of a cost of living crisis. And ordinary people are already struggling and cannot afford a tit-for-tat tariff war. So with all the pressure on households, what you have done in government is that you have ruled out a cost of living package in the October budget. So the message, it appears, from government is that working people are on your own. And if that wasn't enough for working people to worry about, they heard from the Gael Parliamentary Party that the prospect of counter-tariffs from the EU means that the government may need to take difficult decisions. So, Taoiseach, you talk about difficult decisions. Unfortunately, the Irish people are all too familiar with difficult decisions. They've seen it time and time again. Just last week, we've seen how your government prioritised CEOs and political insiders on massive salaries, while ordinary workers were being asked to wait longer for pay increases, bringing them to a living wage. So can I ask you, Taoiseach, what assessment has your department done on the impact on prices and jobs from increasing tariffs and EU countermeasures? Can you assure the public that their interests and Ireland's interests will be reflected in the EU's response announced today, and that the all-Ireland economy will be protected? And finally, do you accept that Irish people are living through a cost of living crisis, and what is now needed is certainty that there will be a cost of living package in this year's budget?
Well, thanks very much, Deputy Doherty, and let me begin where you began in relation to the to the trade situation, to the tariff situation, and specifically the all-Ireland economy. This morning I spoke to your colleague, my counterpart, the Minister for the Economy in the Northern Ireland Executive, Ciara Archibald. I want to thank her for the engagement that she's having with me on an ongoing basis and for the way she's going about her business. We have agreed to meet by way of video conference either tomorrow or Monday, once we have clarity, I suppose, on what is in the UK-US agreement. And I use that word loosely because at this stage, quite frankly, we don't know if it is a full agreement. Indeed, I've heard speculation around it being heads of an agreement, a framework. So I think it's important we see what comes from that later today. But I'm very clear in all my engagements with the British government. I was very clear when I met the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland about 11 days ago. And I'm very clear in all my engagements at a European level that the unique position of this island and the unique position of the north of this island needs to be factored in to all discussions, both at an EU level with the US and indeed, of course, in our ongoing discussions with the British government too. Of course, we can all point to Windsor Framework and Windsor agreements and mechanisms. It kind of misses the point, though. We want tariffs aren't a good idea, full stop. And the trade that happens right across this island, between these islands, and between this island and the US matters. So I'm absolutely committed to working in good faith with Minister Archibald, with the Northern Ireland Executive, as I must say, I know she is as well. Look, this afternoon, as we're meeting here today, there's going to be a number of things that are going to happen. And really, I think when we look at the EU's response or next steps, I think it needs to be seen through the prism of 4 measures. I mean, firstly and most importantly, the European Union, of which Ireland is a proud member, wants to negotiate. We don't want to be in a tit-for-tat tariff war. I agree with you in relation to that. Tariffs are bad for everybody. There's no winners in relation to a tariff war. And therefore, I think the EU is right in recent days to have intensified its engagement with the United States and the proposals that we're putting forward in terms of how we can find a way forward. The question you ask is a very fair one. Have we got interlocutors willing to do a deal here? And we have to keep working on that. And I think we have to support the work of Maroš Šefčovič, the EU Trade Commissioner, who I believe is doing a very good job in relation to this. So that's step 1. Reach out with proposals, engage in good faith and try to get an agreement and use this 90-day pause. Point 2 is countermeasures. And look, I do take the point. The tariffs aren't good for anyone. I get that. That's absolutely true. I also though think from a negotiation point of view, you do have to negotiate from a position of strength. I think Irish people get that. You can't go into talks with your hands swinging and kind of ask nicely for a deal. I do think you have to say, look, we want a deal, we want 0 for 0 tariffs, but look, we're a market of 460 million people here in the European Union, and we are going to look at other areas where we'll respond if we have to. Now, the list of countermeasures that will be published today, it's important to say a couple of things about it. It's going to be a very long list, first thing. Second thing is, none of this comes in anytime soon. It goes out to public consultation till at least the 10th of June. Even when the public consultation closes, there's then be more work the Commission needs to do before you even get to a decision-making mechanism within the European Union. So I think, to use your phrase, cool heads, I think we need to apply that to our response to the countermeasures as well. I want to be able to ultimately see the countermeasures list ripped up and never come into effect because we can get to a point of agreement. The third thing that I think the European Union should consider doing, and I expect will, is take a dispute to the WTO. In my view, the United States is not in compliance with World Trade Organization rules, and rules matter, and membership of the WTO matters. And the fourth thing I think we have to do at a European level is continuing to watch for what is often called dumping. The idea that lots of extra goods come to our markets from other parts of the world because of the actions in the EU, and I expect, the actions taken by the US, and I expect the EU to also monitor this very closely. So I think they're the 4 areas where we're likely to see monitoring on. Can I say this? I'd like to offer opposition parties a further briefing with government next week. We should continue to work in hand in glove on this, and I'll also attend a meeting of EU trade ministers in Brussels next Thursday.
Deputy Doherty.
Thank you. Taoiseach, we'll definitely take you up in terms of that briefing. Can I go back to the point I was making? There are 2 points here. First of all, we know tariffs increase prices on consumers, but even if there was no tariffs, there is a cost of living crisis, and I really think that the government don't get it. As I said, you've actually heaped more pressure on families through the carbon tax last week, and whatever way you dress it up, see the people at home. It makes it more expensive to heat their home. It makes it more expensive to cook their food, and that's at a time when they're struggling in terms of their grocery prices, rents, insurance, and so on and so on and so on. In terms of the countermeasures that come from the European Union, I presume that your office has been engaged with them or have cited them. So can you give an early assessment in relation to the impact of those measures in Ireland. If they were to come to pass, we all hope that they will never come to pass. But you told your parliamentary party meeting that we may face difficult decisions. So I'm very concerned, because we've seen you use the issue of tariffs in the past in terms of low-paid workers having to wait longer. As I said, while at the same time government are preparing to increase the CEO's salaries right across the state of semi-state boards, protecting the insiders, as we've seen in terms of Brendan McDonagh's salary and all of the rest. So I do want you to answer that question. You've seen, I presume, the countermeasures come from the European Union. Are they in Ireland's interest? And from your initial assessment, do they protect the all-island economy, or do they challenge it further?
Being honest, if we get to a place where there are countermeasures that have to be introduced by the European Union, that won't be good for the European Union. It won't be good for the US, and it won't be good for the economies in Europe or in the US, because I think it's almost impossible to publish a list that doesn't have an impact in every single member state. What I'm saying to people today is the list will be broad. It will include industrial products. It will include a whole variety of issues. I'm expecting it to run to over 200 pages. I haven't formally seen it myself, and it will have to be assessed, and it will take a period of time to assess. But what I'm saying is there is the time. Because we're not, unlike President Trump, we're not saying here's the list and it comes in tomorrow or it comes in 30 days. We're saying here's the list of measures that we don't want to take. We have to have them prepared though in case. We want to consult, we want to engage. There will be consultation for the 10th of June, out until at least the 10th of June, so nothing will change in the here and now. And yes, I did tell my parliamentary party what I tell the Irish people, what I did say during the general election, what Minister Donoghue says regularly too. If we get to a situation where President Trump's agenda of high tariffs and protectionism takes hold and there isn't an improvement, that will have an effect on our economy. And we do have to navigate that challenge. And the effect, you ask what does that effect look like? I think it is, in fairness, outlined in the progress report published by the Minister yesterday, in terms of what economic growth looks like, what job creation looks like, and the different levels that would be at in that scenario compared to a scenario where there is free-flowing trade. But we keep working at this calmly and, as you say, with cool heads.
Thank you.
Like, share, and subscribe, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.